time at Gitanagari, we had 30 cows that were milking, and I think the farm was 300 acres, something like that. We also had 30 oxen standing around in the barn, eating and doing not much else. And when I saw this, it appeared to me to be an anomaly, and I thought this is not what Prabhupada meant when he said solve the economic problem with land and cow. Because especially at the same time, we were using tractors there to plow the fields. So that started me thinking about the economics of the situation, and I've been studying that subject ever since. In 1988, Krishna gave me some inspiration. I was reading Bhagavad Gita and understood Krishna was telling us about economics. The more I thought about that, the more I began to see that everywhere in Prabhupada's books. There's a great deal about economics and how to understand economics, particularly solving the economic problem with land and cow. In order to understand that statement, we have to understand first what the economic problem is. Too often we think of the economic problem as how to get money to survive. Because in the culture that we all live in, that's how we live. We live with money. But in order to properly understand economics from Bhagavad Gita and that statement, how to solve the economic problem with land and cow, we have to understand Bhagavad Gita in its own context. Too often what we try to do is understand or interpret Bhagavad Gita according to the context in which we live, or the culture in which we live. And this winds up changing the philosophy. If any of you may know, this discussion recently has come up on the internet. Krishna Kirti Prabhu has recently written some very interesting things about this subject. So I want to present some ideas about Varnashram to you in a way that I think are probably different from the ways that you might have considered it before. How much time do I have, Maharaj? 1 hour?
We have about, we want to close out by 2 o'clock, and we want to give some time for questions.
So usually I give complete seminars on this, and I have to condense it all into 1 hour. So obviously I can just give you the highlights. But what I want to do is focus on some of the very significant differences that, in my opinion, are fundamental or provide the foundation for understanding Varnashram Dharma and Vedic culture. Varnashram Dharma is several things. First of all, it's a culture. Okay? What do we mean when we say culture? Culture is one of those things which is, practically speaking, invisible to us because we live in it. We're raised in it from the time we're small children, and we do it without thinking. So oftentimes when I speak, I ask people to describe me some things about their culture. It's difficult for them. It's easy for us to understand culture if we go to another culture, and then we can see the differences. So some of you are from India, some of us are foreigners. When we come to India, immediately the cultural differences become apparent. There are some things that are similar to all cultures in the way the world is currently arranged. And there are some things that are unique to Krishna culture. I often use the word Krishna culture interchangeably with Varnashram Dharma when I want to emphasize the cultural aspect. So if I say Krishna culture, I mean Varnashram Dharma, but I mean it in the entirety of the culture. Let's take some examples. Prabhu, you're from Spain. Can you tell us something about your culture that is unique as far as you know? Unique. Different from what we see in India, different from what we might see in America? Yeah, see? He proves my point. How about cultural differences between India and Spain?
The people there are, for example,
not so bad here.
They believe in God, but they were worried there about working God. In India, everyone knows that at least some aspects of both fighting there.
Okay.
For other people,
That's a good one. Yeah, of course. I'm just asking. I'm not giving a value judgment, just cultural things. How about from anybody from America? You want to say?
Making sap, syrup,
huh? Oh yeah.
maple syrup.
Maple syrup. Is that unique for North America?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the only thing we know.
How about Indian culture? Those of you from India, tell us something unique about your culture. I'm sorry?
Colorful.
Color?
Sorry.
Okay. In America, yeah, it's true. Everybody wears black, it seems, in America now. So India is certainly more colorful. Oh, there's festivals everywhere. People always have festivals. Many of these things that we're talking about are actually fairly superficial. I want to talk about some of the more fundamental aspects of culture which are more difficult to recognize. Technology. It's a very space-age looking recorder. Whose is this? MIH's. Okay. Who's MIH? Who is that?
Mayapur Institute for Higher Education and Training.
Okay. There is an example of culture. MIHE, is this a person? No. It's a concept. We have corporations. Okay? So MIHE is a organization. Corporation is also an organization. But what is it in reality? It's an idea. Okay? We've organized modern society around many such ideas as corporations. United States government, in fact, is a corporation. Many of the municipalities in America are corporations, probably most of them by now. Corporations are very interesting because as a figment of the imagination, we can give them properties which don't exist in reality. For example, in America, a corporation is considered a person, and a very interesting person, because corporations are eternal. You know any other person in this world that's eternal? In this world? In this world? No. We're all eternal spirit souls. They try to take a figment and make it a reality, just like the eternal spirit soul. And we live according to those ideas. So that's a very good example. But there's something, and there's another one that's much more fundamental. Anybody can guess what that is? Krishna talks about this in Bhagavad Gita. Karmanyavarikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma kama palahitur bhuva mate sangostva karmani. You have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work, they're misers, right? So, anybody in here have a job? Why do you work?
Money.
Money is otherwise called the fruit of your activity, right? Krishna says you're not entitled to that. We have a problem. This is a big cultural difference between the modern society, or what I call the dominant culture, and the Krishna culture. Krishna's culture is based on reality. The dominant culture is based on illusion. Let me give you another example of modern society's illusions. What's that? He's right. We call this money, right? Every country has their own variety.
And one of the illusions that we live according to is that this has value. Actually, this one has just as much value, doesn't it? In fact, probably even more, because there's more space to write on, right? But we give this a particular value in our culture. If you go down to the bazaar and you find some nice murtis, and you say, here, let me give you some paper for those murtis. And you give them this. Huh? What will they say? What, are you crazy? Huh? They say, but it's more paper, look.
There's at least 6 times more paper there than there is on this one. So, what's the problem?
Huh? Why does this paper work and this one does not?
That carries a promise.
Huh?
That one carries a promise.
This one carries a promise. Okay. Why?
That disciples.
Who's they? Who they decided? People. Who said that? Because all of us agree. Not just the government just didn't say, but we agree. This one has value, this one does not. Huh? Huh? It has a different value. Each piece of paper has its own value, but these particularly, let me give you another example. This one says 10, this one says 100. Why? Why is one worth 10 and one worth 100? Because there's 10 times more paper? Yeah, the same reason. Because we all agree. We agree the one with 10 is worth 10, and the one with an extra 0, oh, that's worth 10 times as much. But in fact, in reality, they're pieces of paper. And they have no value in reality. You can't eat it. Huh? Prabhupada said many times, you can't eat your money. If you have a problem, you can't eat your money. Now, this is the fundamental building block of modern society. Also falling under the heading of I and mine. Modern society is constructed in such a way to enhance, to be able to build up, facilitate the consciousness, the idea of I and mine. If I have more paper than you do, I'm richer. I'm better. I can do more. Is that reality? Or is that illusion? Modern society, the building blocks of modern society work to create greater and greater illusions. Now, eventually, at some point, they stop working. And that's the situation the world is in today. Why do we have so many problems in the world? Because we're trying to make illusions reality. And they don't work for everybody. So, if we want to fix all these problems, Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness can solve all the problems of modern life. Why? Because Krishna consciousness is based on reality and not on illusion. Not on artificial constructs, ideas that are created out of somebody's imagination for the purpose of serving them at your expense. The Krishna culture that we want to create is opposite in nature. Completely antithetical, opposite to the dominant culture that exists today. It's based on reality, not an illusion. And we have to be very careful in our efforts to establish Varnasrama Dharma not to mix these two concepts. If we try to mix in the concept of the dominant culture with the Varnasrama culture, it cannot be successful. It cannot. It must fail because it's based on illusion. So we have to be very clear to separate these ideas. First thing we have to understand is, Prabhu, he nicely put so many quotes on the board about this. Who owns the land? Krishna. It's Krishna's land. So, when we want food, we go to plant some seed. Does Mother Earth say, no, first 100 rupees, otherwise I won't produce? No. Huh? Krishna's arrangement is that the devotees, they serve each other out of love. You give some seed to the land, Mother Earth makes it grow. Krishna sends the rain. By this cooperative effort, then the grains come. Then what do? Yagya. We don't just take them and eat them. We offer them first to sacrifice. Krishna's culture is a culture of reciprocation. We take the grains from the field, we offer them to Krishna. Krishna doesn't just take it and say, thank you very much, that was good. No. He offers it back to us as his prasadam. Then what do? Just eat it? And that's it? No, well, we eat it, but we offer it to Krishna, again, as the fire of digestion. We honor prasadam. And Krishna accepts that offering, and he gives us back our life energy with which to serve him. So this reciprocation goes on and on and on. And this is the basis for Krishna culture, for Varnasrama culture. There must be this reciprocation between all people, all elements of society. So this is what this understanding also helps us to solve the economic problem. What is the economic problem? Clothing, food, house. This word economos comes from the Greek word economos, means household. How to solve how to get what I need to survive. So solving the economic problem means food, shelter, clothing, basically. It doesn't mean commerce, it doesn't mean trade, it doesn't mean building up a big bank balance. It doesn't mean those things. And in my opinion, we should not have in our Krishna culture such artificial things as money. Prabhupada gave us an example of the Krishna culture in the way he established his temples. In the temple, everybody is considered son and daughter of Krishna. Just like any other family, there's no buying and selling between the members of the family. We take what we need, we give the service that we can, and live simply, doing devotional service. So, whether it's the size of one family, the size of one temple, or, my opinion is, that Varnashram means to expand this idea that we already have in Prabhupada's temples to the size of a village. And the entire village should function under the same understanding that everything belongs to Krishna. I have the opportunity here to render service to Krishna and his devotees. And in exchange, they will also give me whatever service I require. And together we can survive very nicely and happily, doing sacrifice, performing Krishna consciousness, and at the end of life I'll go home back to Godhead. There's a lot more I have to say, so I can't speak so much more about culture, but the most fundamental building blocks, the foundation of this modern culture is the concept of private property, private ownership, and again, different kind of fictions such as corporations. So we have to be very careful to separate that. Sometimes in our Varnashram communities, the devotees have the idea of again they mix the different cultural ideas in. That you can come in our community and you can buy a piece of land and you can own your own house. Okay, that's one idea. But I don't think that's the idea of Bhagavad Gita. We have a wonderful philosophy in Bhagavad Gita, but if we don't live it, what good is it? Then we become the armchair speculators that Srila Prabhupada spoke about. They sit around and talk high philosophy all the time, but then they go and do something else. Particularly this one point, if we don't understand and establish this one point, that Krishna is the owner of everything, And I think you put one quote on the board about that? You put one quote on the board. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it comes from that. Isavasamidam sarvam. Krishna is the owner of everything. And we have to learn how to live according to this idea. This means we actually have to create our Krishna culture. We have to create this Varnasrama culture based on the philosophy of Ishapanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and so on, not mixing in the two ideas. One other thing about culture is sometimes devotees have the idea that Varnasrama Dharma means we just go live on a farm, or we go live in the village. And oftentimes too often in fact, in Ukraine, devotees, they come to me and they say, well, Prabhu, me and my family, we moved out, we've got 2 hectares and 2 cows, what do we do? How do we do Varnasrama Dharma? And I tell them, well, probably the best thing for you to do is move back to the city, because after staying there for 5 years, you're going to burn out and then have nothing and then come back to the city anyway. So, Varnasrama Dharma is a culture. Can one family be a culture? No. Culture means a whole lot of people. We have a nice example of a culture here in Mayapur. Last night, when Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, spoke at the Pandal, he was saying, festival, this is the most wonderful festival in the world. Everybody needs festivals. So yes, festivals, dramas, musicians, these are part of culture. And our Varnashram communities must have a place for these people. Because if we don't have our own culture in Varnashram communities, and people cannot live without culture, where are they going to get it? Internet, television, run back to the city on weekends. We have to have culture. So it's not simply a matter of growing food in the field. That's, of course, one important aspect because we all have to eat. But it's important that we include all of society in our Varnashram villages. Otherwise, we wind up going to get culture wherever we can. I'm trying to remember a thought that just escaped. Okay, I'll try to come back to that. So, what else is Varnashram Dharma besides culture? Or a part of that culture is relationships. We can call this social organization, or we can just call it Varna. But it means relationships between people. Again, I want to point this out explicitly because I want to convey the idea that Varnashram Dharma means something more than how do we grow our own food and live on the land. There's all different kinds of people in the world. Everybody has different inclinations, different tendencies. We call that Svadharma or Dharma or Varna. And in between these different groups of people who like to do different things, there has to be a basis for relationships. We don't think about this too much in the context of modern culture because it's automatic. Our relationships are based on what? This. Our relationships are based on money. In other words, practically, we don't have relationships. You go down to the store to buy something, he gives you some product, you give him some money. There's no relationship. This stuff also gives us the idea that we're independent, right? That if I have a lot of money, I can be independent, and particularly for the ladies. I'm independent, but that's another illusion. Because if there's no clerk in the store, what good is your money? If there's no goods in the store, what good is your money? If the truck driver didn't bring the goods to the store, what good is your money? If the man who sells the gasoline didn't put it there in the tank so the truck driver could get it, what good is your money? we're actually very dependent on so many people, but in the context of modern civilization, we can't see that dependent relationship. Therefore, we think ourselves to be independent, and we find it difficult to cooperate with each other because we don't have to. Right? I've got my money. I don't have to cooperate with you. Isn't that how it works? I do my own thing. You do yours. Like that. This is another thing that has to change in Varnasrama culture. We have to recognize how we're dependent on each other, and we have to find a way to make that dependency, that cooperative dependency, work in a harmonious way. This is going to be a big challenge, because we're all conditioned souls, and we're all conditioned to being independent, not depending on others. If we go to a piece of land, I've got my house, say everybody here, we live in the same village. We've all got our own houses. And you grow grains, and you take care of the cows and produce milk, and from that milk you produce cheese, and you grow cloth, you grow cotton, and you make the cloth. Immediately we can see our dependencies. If I want to have milk, I'm dependent on this man. Otherwise I've got to get my own cow. And because I know him personally, we've got now a much more personal relationship. I'm concerned about his welfare because I like milk. If he's sick one day and he can't milk the cows, hey, some of us better get together and go help him out. Huh? Like that. You can see, money creates a very impersonal culture. It separates us from each other. It divides us. But take that out of the equation, and immediately we're dependent on each other, and we must learn how to cooperate. So we have to be conscious of culture. It's a very difficult thing to do because generally we're so unconscious of culture. If we try to go and do Varnasrama Dharma in an unconscious way, it's going to be very difficult. We're going to wind up with all kinds of problems. People are going to fight, and then they'll just say, it's easier to go make money and live in the city. See you later. So we have to plan for these things. We have to understand exactly what it is that we're getting into so that when these situations come up, we can deal with them properly, and so that we can all appreciate our situation relative to everybody else. It's going to be a challenge. There's, of course, many problems in the world today. I'm writing a book on what I call spiritual economics, the same topic, these things I've been discussing, economics based on Bhagavad Gita. And there's, of course, many people that can see the economic problems in the world today. Many books are written about this. The failures of modern economic structures. And so a lot of people are looking for solutions to them. But they're looking for solutions in a isolated or independent way. Their thinking, of course, is limited by their consciousness. And their consciousness, of course, is limited by their education and by their culture. We have the advantage in Krishna consciousness that thinking has been expanded to include the spiritual dimension of reality and how this living being, how the spirit soul interacts with the material energy in this world. That gives us a much better understanding of what the real problem is and how to solve the problem. Probably most of you, or many of you, may know the social psychologist Erich Fromm. He was a student of Sigmund Freud. And he began to study culture after he left Germany at the beginning of the Third Reich. Because he saw the behavior of Hitler in the Third Reich, he started to study evil people, evil society. He wrote one book called Escape from Freedom, in which he said that modern man, because of his social conditioning, cannot tolerate freedom. He doesn't want to be free. Therefore, he prefers a situation like a fascist culture, like Hitler was running in Germany. And so he wrote a very wonderful book about that. The book that he followed that up with is called The Sane Society. Asking the question is, if people can be psychologically insane, can whole societies be psychologically insane? And his answer was yes. His conclusion about how to develop a sane society was that it cannot be done on a piecemeal basis. We cannot simply have a sane society by solving the economic problem or solving the social problem, the religious problem, or whatever problem individually. All of these things are completely interconnected because every person in society is a multi-dimensional being in that sense, where we have all of these parts of society integrated within ourselves in some way or other. So his premise was that all of these things, they must be solved all together. Now, who can do that? Only us. We're the only ones. This Krishna consciousness movement is the devotees in this Krishna consciousness movement are the only ones who have the bigger picture, who can see from outside the box and understand the real nature of the problem is material consciousness, material conditioning, trying to increase the idea of I and mine, and also the solution. The solution is understanding our spiritual nature and purifying our polluted material consciousness. So we have this task not only for ourselves, but I'm convinced that this Varnashram preaching can become the biggest preaching in the world. Varnashram Dharma is not simply for devotees. How are we going to get a nice place of land, sit down privately, raise our families, and to hell with society? That's not what Varnashram Dharma is about. Varnashram Dharma is about everybody else. Like you put the quote there. You cannot save all of them on a big scale. On a big scale, all of them cannot become Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. No. Varnashram Dharma is required for that. So, it's for everybody else. Now, with that understanding, I want to give you my idea of Varnashram Dharma as a process. Okay? We talked about Varnashram Dharma, different aspects of it, culture, relationships, but it's also a process. One problem with modern society is that it has no goal. Nobody knows where they're going in life. Especially young men. Somebody mentioned about young men the other day. Maybe it was in Bhagavatam class or here yesterday. But young men are completely lost. They're 30 years old, they're running around on their skateboard, with their baggy pants and their hat on backwards and trying to figure out which end is up, They don't have a clue. In other words, where do I fit into society? They don't know. Modern society, you have to find your own place. But in Krishna culture, the place is arranged for you, and a place that works for you. That point I was trying to remember earlier. How do we decide who is who in Varnashram? Which Varna are you? Any Sudras here? Vaishyas? There's always a few humble devotees who will put up their hand. Oftentimes we don't get any Sudras. Everybody wants to be a Brahmana. The actuality is we're Varna Sankara, We're all mixed Varnas. That's it. Very good. Aspiring. But we're all mixed Varnas. Myself, I've got tendencies of a Brahmin, tendencies of a Kshatriya, tendencies of a Shudra, but Vaishya, forget it. I can't make a dime. That's right. That's the Brahminical. That's the Brahminical side of it. See? So, how are we going to decide this Varna thing? Right? Who's going to be who? Because we have a materialistic idea of Varna. Brahmana is high, Shuddha is low. And of course, modern society, everybody wants to be high. So how do we deal with that? What's the solution? How about this? Do what you like to do. Okay? Whatever it is you like to do, whatever makes you happy, do that. Now, the statistics are that about 80% of people don't like the work that they do. Why do they do it? Because they need the money. Huh? So they're wasting their life twice. Materially, right? They don't have any spiritual life, so life is completely wasted. And then even materially, they don't like what they're doing. Most of life is spent at work, and that's a waste too. So replace that with, come to our Varnasrama village, find something that you like to do. Whatever makes you happy. Because we need all aspects of society to make a culture, right? You want to make something, you want to perform, you want to do music, you want to do art, you want to make glass, you want to make ceiling fans, light bulbs, whatever. We need all of those things, which is another important aspect of the economics. Varnasrama culture is not a consumer culture. Very important point. We're not going to go to that land, try to grow food, sell it in the marketplace, and compete with multinational corporations. You can't do it. Entire countries are going bankrupt. Countries that were food exporting nations are now food importing nations because the economics of the situation is adjusted to put them in poverty. We have to become producers and not consumers. In my project, whoever comes there, they have to bring a skill. You can't just come there and live. You have to have a skill. You have to make something. I don't care what it is. Make something. Make incense, make soap, make candles, make whatever. Teach. Yeah. Services are also. But we also have to producing is important. Principally, we want to produce our own food, our own cloth, and our own shelter. So we're going to use straw bale construction. We're going to use thatched roofs. Actually, village life in Ukraine is very close to this still. I'll speak about that more in that section for that. Village life in Ukraine is very simple still. They're still living in what they call saman houses, which are mud and straw. And they still construct houses from that. There's houses 100 years old that are still livable. Ukraine. Next to Russia. Anyway, so that was the point that I forgot. I wanted to get back to that. We have to become producers, not consumers. We have to stop being consumers, because as long as you're a consumer, you need money. And to get money, you got to get a job. You have to get it from somebody else. And then you get entangled in the whole thing. To get a job, then you need a card, and then you need insurance, then you need gasoline, then you need money, and you can't get ahead. It's designed that way. Okay, back to Varnasrama as a process. The purpose of Varnasrama Dharma is to take everybody back home, back to Godhead. It's a spiritual spaceship. It's like a spaceship. So our villages should be spaceports back to Vaikuntha. How do we get there from here? Is the question. We're all conditioned souls, mired in the modes of nature. We have to come from this conditioned nature to pure spiritual beings. Now, some of us, we've been able to appreciate Prabhupada's books and take up this chanting of Hare Krishna. Many people cannot. I've met people doing Sankirtan, try to distribute them a book, and they said, yeah, somebody else sold me that book about 5 years ago. Tried to read that thing. I couldn't understand a word. Right? And maybe some of you have had the same experience. A lot of people, they just can't. It doesn't make sense to them. Why? Because they try to understand the book in the context of their own culture. Krishna says, Natvevaham jastunasam natvamani me chanaripaha. Never was there a time when that did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. But the guy says, hey, wait a minute. I was born July 17th, 1975. Before that, I didn't exist. And my grandfather, he died 4 years ago. So what does it mean? Never in the future shall any of us cease to be? This book is crazy. Right? If we try to understand Bhagavad Gita in the context of the dominant culture, it doesn't make sense. What is meant to happen is that we reframe our own understanding to match Bhagavad Gita. This is important on every level, so many levels in Bhagavad Gita. All of those instructions are there. We have to adjust ourselves to Bhagavad Gita and not adjust Vedic understanding to ourselves. So, a lot of people can't do that. They don't have the intelligence to be able to figure it out, so they're stuck. What do? Varnasrama Dharma is given in chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita. Anybody have a Gita here? Varnash? You have on your computer? You have folio? Okay. And bring up chapter 12. If I can remember the verses correctly, I think it's verse 3 and 4, or maybe 5 and 6, where Krishna says, the goal of life. The goal of life, do everything for me, offer everything as devotional service, give up fruitive activity. So this becomes the target. This is the goal. Yeah, well, pull that up and let's see what it is. It's 3 and 4 together? No, I don't care about the Sanskrit. What's the English? Yeah, I look at the English. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so text 3 and 4. For those, no, that's not it. Text 6 and 7. But those who worship me, giving up all of their activities unto me, being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating on me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Prita, for them I am the deliverer, swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So this is the goal of life, isn't it? To always think of Krishna, never forget him, offer everything to him as devotional service. So culture must have a goal, must have an objective. And this one verse gives the objective of Varnasrama Dharma. So, now, what if he can't do that? This is describing pure devotee, a pure devotee of the Lord. Okay, we're not all at that stage. What do we do next? The next verse then, Krishna says in text number 9, if you cannot fix your mind upon me, then just follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. It's not a bullseye, but it's closer to the goal. That's what we're doing, following Bhakti Yoga. If one cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. So, these are things that one can do progressively to come closer and closer to Krishna. In fact, if you look at it, many devotees, we go through this whole process in coming to Krishna consciousness. We first come to the temple, we associate a little bit. Okay, this is nice. Let me make some donation. I give up the fruits of my activity for Krishna. And then later on, we continue to associate, take prasadam, hear the holy name. Okay, then we start meditating. Here's some japa beats, Prabhu. Go home and meditate. Okay? Then we start chanting japa. Or maybe we start reading the books first. We read some Prabhupada's books, and then by getting a better understanding, then we start meditation. Then we decide, okay, let me go work for Krishna. We come to the temple, we do devotional service. And then, finally, we come to this platform of bhakti yoga and become initiated devotees. I'm suggesting that this process is a process of Varnasrama Dharma. It's meant to bring all the people closer and closer to Krishna gradually according to what they can do. The problem is we don't make much provision for that in our city temples. But if you have a rural project, there's much more things that can be done. A very good example of that was Miami Temple when Narahari Prabhu was temple president. They had, about 2 acres near the University of Miami. And Narahari Prabhu was creating a very beautiful subtropical paradise there. And oftentimes hippies would come by and they'd want to say, "I'm really hungry, man. You got any of that food?" He'd say, "Yeah, okay, sure, we're going to have prasadam in about 2 hours. In the meantime, why don't you go over there and we got to move that dirt from that place over to there. And if you finish with that, there's some flowers there. You see that Prabhu over there? He'll help you." So they would come. They don't care about the philosophy. They're just interested in prasadam. But, okay, let me work for Krishna. Narahari was able to engage devotees that nobody else could engage. Any temple president had a problem, they just sent him to Miami, and Narahari was very happy, and everybody was happy. It was a win-win situation. So, this is what we want. We want to have a situation where we have one big happy family. Everybody is doing what they can according to their ability, according to their consciousness. If I can only work for Krishna, okay, just do that part. If I can chant and meditate also, that's even better. And if I can follow bhakti yoga, so much even better. Our devotees, in terms of Varnasrama Dharma, must give the example, according to shlokas 325 and 26. Krishna says there that the learned should also act as an example to the others, but without being attached to the fruit of activities. So the others, they may be attached to fruits. They want, their conception of life is I and mine. So they want to get some fruits. Okay. That's Varnasrama Dharma. I want to distinguish between 2 kinds of Varnasrama Dharma. Regular Varnasrama, and then what I call Daivi Varnasrama. And this is one of the things I was mentioning to Maharaj. We have to try to get this nomenclature figured out, because I may have mine, you may have, everybody may have their own different idea. This goal of pure devotional service, this is Daivi Varnasrama. Pure devotional service. Everyone's a pure devotee. And what do? They act within the Varnasrama system is for the purpose of giving an example to others how to behave, but without being attached to the fruits. Without having the understanding of I and mine. Others who cannot come to that platform, they can, by following this process of Varnasrama Dharma, come closer and closer to that goal, and eventually also become perfect. Krishna says later in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that by following his own work, a man can become perfect. So, in thinking about that verse, it sounds like Krishna is saying that just work for me, and you can become perfect. If you work with that consciousness, let me please Krishna. So, many people, they may not take up chanting. They may be attached to some other different conceptions. But if they can simply work for Krishna, that in itself is so purifying that they'll come closer and closer to Krishna and eventually become perfect. Okay. I tried to cover a lot in a little bit of time. I'm going to leave just a few minutes. There's one other point that I wanted to make, which again I can't remember, but I'm going to leave it away. So, anyway, if there's any questions, we can discuss for a few minutes.
At the start of your session, you mentioned
Okay. What does Varnasrama Dharma look like? It's like a big family. A father, he has a household. This is called Kshatriya. He's got a lot of land, and he allocates that land according to the ability of people to use it. If you've got enough energy capacity, you can make 10 acres produce, you get 10 acres. If you can make 20 acres produce, you get 20 acres. But if you have 20 acres but then don't make it produce, he can take it away. In my understanding of Varnasrama Dharma, the Kshatriya, he must have control over all the property. And in fact, in my project, what I've done, I've started out by looking for a Kshatriya. Because Prabhupada, there's several times in Prabhupada's works where he says, Brahman and Kshatriya are both required. A Kshatriya cannot do what a Brahman can do, and a Brahman cannot do what a Kshatriya can do. What we typically try to do is we use a method of the dominant culture. We go out and raise a lot of money from a bunch of different people and then get some land. I think this is the wrong way to go about it. Because a Kshatriya is such a man that he needs to do that. And you've taken his job away from him. He's such a guy, he wants to provide for everybody, take care of everybody. He needs to get that land himself.